Hello, welcome to Today in the World, where I'll be talking about news from around the world and giving you my thoughts. Before I get into the one and only news story that's currently happening today, I wanted to cover. Disclaimer. Anyways, before I get into that, I wanted to just give you an update on some of the other stories happening. I wanted to give you an update on Venezuela. It seems like there's something new happening there every day. It's not a huge update. It's nothing crazy. And then I also wanted to give you an update on what's happening in Nigeria, because the protests did happen today, but some other stuff also happened there, so we're going to discuss that as well. And then I also wanted to discuss the rising tensions happening in the Middle East again. This is a story that seems to not want to go away. We are continually getting more and more updates out of the Middle East, and it just seems tensions keep rising and rising. It's a very unfortunate situation, but what can you do? So just to open with a little bit of humor, I think everybody's probably heard about the Elon Musk and Nicolas Maduro fight. I think it has as much chances of happening as the Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg fight, but I do think it's kind of funny that these two are on Twitter and are challenging each other to fights and accepting fights, and it reminds me of like two kids in school who are like, let's meet behind the school after and fight this out, or let's meet, by the bike rack. It's got that kind of vibe to it. Like, nothing will probably come of it, but it is a little bit humorous. Musk said on Twitter, if I win, he resigns, and if he wins, I'll send him to free for Mars. Sorry, I'll send him to Mars for free. My bad. Yeah, anyways. Again, it's unlikely this will happen. It would be really cool, but anecdote. Anyways, looking at Venezuela again, because the opposition leader, who I just want to clarify again, the opposition leader is not the presidential candidate. The opposition leader was someone who actually started out as a presidential candidate until she was removed by Nicolas Maduro. She is very popular. And anyways, there have been threats by Nicolas Maduro to jail her, and so she has gone into hiding. And what she has said is that she is worried for her life and her freedom. I believe Maduro is also calling for the presidential candidate Gonzalez to be jailed as well. I'm not surprised by this, because of the increasing amount of pressure from foreign countries, even just countries in South America who are calling for voter tallies to be released, who are calling for him to step down, to resign, who are calling for another election to be held. None of this is likely to happen because Maduro does have the backing of China and Russia. I don't know exactly what the backroom deals are there, but I'm sure there is some kind of security guarantee, considering the vast oil reserves in Venezuela. Yes, and then I'm just going to move on to Nigeria, where the protests did happen today. Something else also happened today. There was a bomb that exploded in a marketplace in Nigeria. It said it was from an Islamic militant group, Boko Haram. They've been an insurgency group that have been operating in Nigeria since 2009. And it looks like they killed at least 16 people and wounded dozens of others. That's what's being reported on the ground there. So the government in Nigeria has called for a 24-hour curfew in the area. The young people who were near where the explosion happened, they still got out to protest. And then just talking about the protest a little bit. Sorry. So the security forces fired tear gas to disperse the protesters in several locations. It's being reported that tear gas was used in the capital, Abuja, and then in the second largest city, Kano. And then I believe in Lagos, also tear gas was used. The government and media in the area are saying that they used tear gas because the protesters were starting bonfires outside of government buildings. I don't know what tear gas feels like. I have never had tear gas shot at me. I also don't live in a country with an economy as bad as Nigeria for young people. So I don't know honestly where I fall on this. I don't think you should be setting fires in the middle of a city. But I also don't know what tear gas feels like. So it's kind of hard for me to fall on a side there. Because I don't really understand either side. Maybe if I was a young person who was very disgruntled with the way things were being run in my country, spoilers, I am, and maybe if I was undergoing economic hardship, I would better understand, but I only fit one of those categories, so not quite there yet. Who knows? And then I'm just going to move on to the last update I want to talk about, and that is obviously the Middle East. The gunpowder barrel that could blow us all to war. Yeah. So according to early reports and preliminary information, Hezbollah has fired 25 missiles from Lebanon into Israel. This was the first attack that Hezbollah has launched at Israel since their military commander was killed by Israel in Beirut. Because it's getting very tense there, the U.S. and the EU have their diplomats holding urgent talks with Iraq, with Israel. I've heard that the diplomats are also trying to get in touch with Hezbollah and initiate talks there as well. I don't know if these talks will go anywhere. I said this yesterday, I'll say this again today. It looks increasingly likely that war is going to break out in the Middle East. The Iranian supreme leader has said that they consider it their duty to take vengeance on Israel for killing the Hamas leader in Tehran. It's been a long time since tensions ran this high in the Middle East. We can be thankful at least that there aren't more Middle Eastern countries who are getting involved in this conflict. I'm pretty sure that Russia and China, if war did break out, would back Iran and Iran's proxies in the area. And the U.S. absolutely would back Israel. I wouldn't be surprised if more Western countries also backed Israel. It looks like maybe this will end up being a proxy war between East and West. Maybe this will be, like I said earlier, the gunpowder keg that blows us all to war. I'm at the point where I'm like, oh my goodness, I hope this is just going to be a proxy war because it's getting pretty bad. The UN Security Council is expressing alarm over the risk of all-out war in the Middle East. Japan's deputy UN representative is quoted as saying, "We fear the region is at the brink of all-out war." Also happening in the Middle East, the U.S. has imposed new sanctions since the election of the new Iranian president. The sanctions are targeted at Iran's missile and drone programs. And that's basically all I have for you today for the updates on those stories. The one story I did want to talk about today, I thought really the only big international story that's happening today is the prisoner swap occurring between the U.S. and Russia. If we think back to other... before I move on to that story, actually, I just wanted to say one thing on the Middle Eastern tensions, and that is that at one point America did have a president who managed to sign deals in the Middle East called the Abraham Accords. It looked like that was going to bring some measure of peace in the area. And then another U.S. president decided we don't need the Abraham Accords. So it looks like this is a case of which way, Western man, will you take? Hopefully we take the path of not war. But I don't see that as very likely. I think people are stupid. Anyway, the U.S. and Russia prisoner exchange. It's not, in my opinion, this is like the previous prisoner exchange. This is a prisoner exchange that favors Russia. It's not as bad as the previous one where you traded a druggy basketball player for an arms dealer. That was pretty bad. That was probably the worst trade deal in the history of trade deals. Sorry. Yeah, and that's the trade deal where you had snubbed one of your ex-Marines, Paul Whelan. So the U.S. made another prisoner swap this time around. They had to use a bunch of their allies in Europe to get this trade deal done. It's being called one of the biggest trade deals in post-Soviet era Moscow, with Moscow releasing Washington Post journalist Evan Gershkovich and the American ex-Marine Paul Whelan, along with other Russian dissidents, in a multinational deal that set 24 people free. I will dig a little deeper into the Russian dissidents a little later. The 24-person deal required significant concessions from the European allies. This included the release of a Russian assassin who was detained in Germany in 2021 for the death of a Chechen rebel. Yeah, we let a Russian assassin go free. It's definitely the worst person Russia got back. And by worst, I mean best for Russia, but like worse for everybody else. And if it just ended with just one Russian assassin for all these people, good job, U.S. But no, Russia got a lot more people back. Now, before I get into why I think this is just a horrible trade deal, I do want to preface that by saying it's really fantastic that the people who didn't commit any crimes but were held unjustly are set free and get to spend time with their families again and get to experience freedom again. That's fantastic. Don't get me wrong, amazing. But it's not a very good trade. I don't know who's negotiating these things with Russia, but like they're just giving away the goose and the golden egg for a goose. Again, I don't think it's as bad as the Brittany Griner one. Like, she actually committed a crime there, and she knew she was committing a crime there, and she did it anyway, and then she was detained. How stupid do you have to be to do that? And then the U.S. was like, oh my goodness, we need this WNBA player back. We'll give you one of the worst arms dealers ever of all time. Here you go. And, I'm sorry, that trade just still irks me to this day. It's really annoying. Anyways, it's releasing Russians who have committed crimes, serious crimes, and we're getting people back who haven't committed serious crimes. And if you're going to give Russia people who have done horrible things, maybe don't give them a bunch of people who have done horrible things for a bunch of people who have done nothing. It just seems stupid. I'll get into more of who the Russians got back. I'm just going to go over some of the Russian dissidents that were released. There was a Kremlin critic who was serving 25 years for charges of treason. There was a human rights campaigner that was convicted of discrediting the Russian military. And there was a dissident who was charged for criticizing the war in Ukraine. For that, Russia got an assassin. Again, he was convicted of life in prison. Russia got back 2 sleeper agents. Russia got back a convicted computer hacker. They got an intelligence operative accused of providing American-made electronics and ammunition to the Russian military. Again, I do want to say it's fantastic that the people that America got back get to come home, get to experience their freedom, get to spend time with their families. But I just wish that the trade deals that they made with Russia were not so bad. It feels like all the recent trade deals we've done, we've been giving a lot more than we've been getting. And I disclaimer, I don't know a lot about prisoner trade deals. I don't know how they're made. I don't know what goes into it. I'm sure there have been times in America's past, though, where America has gotten better than they've given. I could be wrong. But it just seems like the past two deals with Russia, we have been giving way more than we're getting. It just absolutely not in our favor at all. Yeah. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. As always, if I've missed any international stories, please let me know. I can be reached at todayintheworld2024@gmail.com or in the comment section of wherever you watch this video. Also, if you're wondering where I get my news, I get a lot of it from Ground News. It's really nice. It kind of lets you know where the news is coming from, where the news leans, left, right, center. Because sometimes you'll see news articles and it'll let you know, oh, this came from the government of China. And I think to myself, okay, so it's not, it's not totally unbiased. It's going to be very biased one way or it's going to be very biased the other way, It's just nice that they let you know that. Also, sometimes I'll get some stories from X, and then I'll go into Ground News, and then I'll look at the articles into it. So that's where I get a lot of my news. I don't use Google. I find Google crazy. I find Google misleading. I know that's insane, considering that the contact for me is a Gmail account. Anyways, I hope this was informative for you, and that you listen to me next time. I will continue to monitor the stories, and I'll let you know what's happening today in the world.